Alright, welcome back. In the last video, we talked about the problems of mind-body interaction, specifically the question of how something like an immaterial mind can cause change in a physical world. How can something non-physical make a difference or cause a change in something physical? We looked at some suggestions for resolving this issue from the property dualists, and we saw some problems with that approach as well. And we saw contrasting explanations or approaches from Gilbert Ryle and Barbara Montero about which we know better, whether we have a better concept of the physical or whether we have a better concept of the mental. Montero takes for granted that we know the mental better than we know the physical because we have the sort of direct privileged access to it that Ryle rejected. But what is it exactly that we have access to? This question lies at the center of the so-called hard problem of consciousness. Again, a term from the philosopher David Chalmers, although the actual concept precedes him. The issue is summarized by David Papineau with three questions. First, how does consciousness relate to other features of reality? Second, where are conscious phenomena located in reality? And third, what is the nature of consciousness? Patricia Churchland, who is the wife of Paul Churchland, puts the matter more bluntly. Out of meat, how do you get thought? Gottfried Leibniz has a famous thought experiment that goes something like this. Imagine the brain as a machine that can think. Now enlarge this mechanical brain to the size of a mill, large enough to walk inside and take a look around. Inside, you will find mechanical components, physical parts that perform physical functions. But nowhere will you find a single thought, a single idea, an emotion, a pain, or an experience of color sensation. No matter where you look inside the Cartesian theater, there seems to be no actual images and no actual screen. So yeah, I mean, if you imagine a giant brain, and you know, we can do that kind of close analysis of the physical functioning of the brain, but what we can't find are ideas. We don't find color sensations when we take a look at it. We don't find the internal screen that we seem to be watching. That if the representationalists are right, we should be viewing reality indirectly, as you'll recall from the last module, via a representation constructed by our minds. But where is this representation projected? And who's watching it? Of course, Leibniz was writing in the 18th century. These days, we don't need to blow the brain up to the size of a building to examine it. We have tools like fMRIs that can provide precise and vivid images of the inner workings of the brain. If a subject sees light waves oscillating at roughly 620 to 750 nanometers, we can see that the V4 region of the visual cortex lights up with increased neuronal activity, and we can expect that the patient will utter the word red. So, light waves oscillating at 620 to 750 nanometers, V4 region of the brain, visual cortex lights up, and that is the underlying physical architecture of the red experience. So when you see red, that's the light waves that are coming and the brain's response to it. That's what that's talking about. And what that means is that we can empirically test what are called the neural correlates of consciousness, or NCCs, which is the network of physical neural activity that correlates with conscious mental experience. So that's the underlying architecture. That's the physical brain activity that the mental experience supervenes upon. For some philosophers, that's enough. Paul Churchland, for example, who we read in this week's readings, argues that mental talk is just what he calls folk psychology. So when we say the words, I see red, I see the color red, what we actually mean by those words is that light waves oscillating at 620 to 750 nanometers are stimulating the V4 region of my visual cortex. That physical description of the brain activity, of the neuronal activity, that's all that we mean when we talk about sensations, when we talk about feeling an emotion, seeing a color, having a memory. What we are doing is using folk psychological terms, and what he means by that is we're not using language that's scientifically rigorous. We're just using sort of a colloquial way that people talk, a sort of a folk lexicon to describe what is actually all we're describing is the underlying physical process. This position is called eliminative materialism. Eliminative because it basically eliminates mental phenomenon from the description. It's a materialism without any mental residue. There's no experience that is not explicable by. There's nothing mental at all that is not explicable by a functional description of brain activity. A lot of people find this intuitively unsatisfying. There seems to be something missing from this objective, quantitative experience or description of redness. It seems to be leaving out the experience, the qualitative aspect of the subjective experience of seeing red. We don't seem to be able to capture that in quantitative terms. When we're talking about oscillating light waves, we seem to be talking about something different than the experience, the quality of seeing something red. That's the big bridge that we're trying to sort of connect here. That scientific, objective, third-person, quantitative description of reality versus our first-person, seemingly direct, subjective experience of reality, a qualitative experience of reality. The subjective, qualitative feeling of what it is like to have an experience are sometimes referred to as qualia. So qualia is short for qualitative sensation or qualitative experience, to distinguish from quanta, from quantitative description that science uses when it talks about things like this, the mathematical discrete. And this gets into Turing later on with the distinction between discrete binary computer states versus the continuous sort of qualitative nature of consciousness. But qualia are kind of puzzling things, right? Excuse me. As Leibniz-Mill illustrates, qualia can't be objectively located in the world. Their essence appears to be purely private and subjective. Our most powerful scientific tools will never locate a subject's qualia in physical space. Wherever that sensation of red is happening, it's not happening in a measurable physical space that we can point to and isolate and test and measure. Yet we all seem to have direct, immediate, intimate access to our own, and no one else's, qualia. Despite their resistance to scientific explanation, the existence of qualia seems to be the most certain thing in the world. In a famous and highly influential series of papers, Thomas Nagel argues that scientific statements about physical facts fail to capture the raw feeling of qualia because it is impossible in principle to express subjective facts using objective statements. So it's subjective being from the perspective of the subject, from the first person point of view. Excuse me. And objective being publicly observable data that's testable and able to be described, mathematically. That's able to be tested. It's object out in the world, subject who is experiencing the object. So what Nagel believes is that it's impossible to reduce the subjective facts to the subjective experience to objective statements. To illustrate this, he famously asks us to imagine what it's like to be a bat. Not what it's like for creatures like us to do bat stuff, like hang upside down or fly, or, we can kind of imaginatively picture, okay, I'm a bat, I'm flying around, I'm hanging upside down, I'm, doing bat things. But I'm not really imagining what it's like to be a bat. I'm imagining like myself doing bat stuff. I'm basically imagining myself as Batman. So he doesn't want us to do that. He wants us to try to imagine what it's like to inhabit the subjective point of view of a species like bats who experience the world through a completely different sensory modality than our own. So a sensory modality is a way of experiencing. The language of physical science can express objective facts regarding sonar and echolocation, and that's how bats primarily experience the world is through sonar and echolocation, sending out sound waves that bounce back, and they're able to sort of navigate and map their surroundings by processing this effect of echoing sound, sort of mapping out the distance between objects. And more so than vision, they rely on that for navigation. And it's kind of similar with dogs. Dogs rely on smells far more than sight, which is interesting because smells have a very different characteristic and they stick around for longer. And dogs can smell things from the past in a way where the past is sort of present. It's interesting to me to think about whether or not, like a dog's perspective of time seems like it would be far more extended than ours, which is very much, based on sight and light, which travels very fast, so it's instantaneous. The present seems to be a very immediate thing to us. Whereas, for something like a dog, it's, if the world is mapped by smells, which linger, which carry over across time, which persist through time in a much more permanent or long-lasting way than light does, then is that perception of time as immediate for them as it is for us? And Nagel's talking about bats and echolocution, that the way they perceive and map the world is through bouncing sound waves off of objects and sort of doing this mental calculation where it measures the distance, and they can map their reality somehow like that instead of by using visual information like we do. So the language of physical science can express objective facts regarding sonar and echolocation, but it cannot express what it is like to experience the world of a bat from the inside. Any attempt to translate the experience of a bat into objective physical terms must necessarily be incomplete. It's leaving something out. There will always be a non-physical remainder that's left over, the raw feeling of the subjective experience, or the feeling of what it's like to be something. And this way of describing it, the what it's likeness of an experience, has really stuck around as a way to capture what we're trying to talk about here, because it's something that's very elusive to describe, because our language is built to describe third-person objects that are publicly testable and shareable in the world. It's meant to be a tool for coordinating, right? Whereas something that's like a private experience is much more elusive to describe. Much more difficult. So Nagel's solution to this problem is to suggest that there is only one type of substance. But that type of substance, so he's a monist. He's a type of monist instead of a dualist. But the type of substance that he proposes is neither purely physical nor purely mental, and instead possesses both objective and subjective aspects. When viewed from the outside, phenomena appear to be objective physical facts. But there is an inside view as well. This is the something that its likeness of subjective experience. So Nagel sometimes refers to this position as a form of neutral monism. So it's a monism that's neutral. It's not physical or mental. And most monistic metaphysics either reduce everything to physical phenomena or to mental phenomena. Neutral monism tries to say, no, it's not either or. It's in some sense both. And this is the view that the substance of reality is neither essentially physical nor mental. It's somehow both. Both of these things are built in. And Nagel's way of looking at this is, again, that the objective third world, publicly expressible and shareable and testable scientific view is how things appear from the outside, but there's an insideness to things as well. And I think for Nagel, he's sometimes unclear on this point, but I think he extends this all the way down. So it's consistent with a position called panpsychism, which is the view that consciousness is a brute fact of the universe. That means that it's not something that emerged later on when humans showed up. It's something that's always been there. And this is a way to approach the mind-body problem. And it's an interesting way. It's had a resurgence here recently. And it's one worth taking seriously, I think. More people seem to be jumping on the panpsychism bandwagon lately because of how difficult this problem is to resolve. If you imagine consciousness as something new that just showed up when humans evolved. But if it's baked in, if it's built in somehow from the beginning, then you have no problem to solve. That resolves the issue. It creates other problems that we're not going to get into, but... So consciousness is a brute fact, and that's what that means, that it's a fact. It's not something that stands in need of explanation in terms of something else, right? It's just a raw fact about the universe. And that all matter, the conclusion from that you draw is that all matter is in some sense either conscious or proto-conscious. Proto-conscious would mean that it's like, every atom is not conscious, is not having an experience. But there is something to it that is a building block that in the right combination will produce consciousness. Not in the emergent sense, but something fundamental, something that's already there, that's a very rudimentary form of that. And whether it's a tendency to move towards or away from something, that could be like your most basic sort of version that as greater and greater thresholds of complexity becomes more complex types of experience or types of reaction. Anyway, Bertrand Russell, once again, and William James, who we'll talk about in Module 5, also sometimes, at least, appear to accept versions of both of these conclusions. Both neutral monism and panpsychism, and a few other people do. Philip Goff is a guy recently who's done a lot of work on that. That's pretty popular. It's interesting. It's really interesting stuff. So Jackson sharpens the point that Nagel's making. So he's kind of building off what Nagel did with his Mary's Room thought experiment, and this is personally one of my favorite thought experiments in philosophy. I think this does a great job of capturing what we're talking about it here, even if Jackson no longer thinks that. So here's the thought experiment. You've got Mary. Mary is the world's greatest color scientist. She knows every fact there is about the neurophysics of human color perception. She knows it all. She is has perfect knowledge of every physical, scientific fact about color science, about the nature of human perception, visual stimuli, how it affects the brain, how light reflects off of things, the different properties, all of that stuff. But because it's a philosophical thought experiment, Mary has lived her entire life within a black and white room and has never actually seen or directly experienced colors. She knows everything that can be learned in a book about them, but she has never actually seen a color. She knows all the factual, objective, scientific statements that one can write down and share publicly through language, but she has not had the first-person subjective experience. One day, Mary leaves the room, the black and white room, and she sees a red rose for the first time. Has Mary learned a new fact? That's the question. Has she learned something new? If she had all the knowledge from the hypothesis, Mary knows every physical fact about color perception before ever seeing the color red. She knows everything that a completed science could possibly write down, communicate quantitatively, third person, objective, publicly about color sensation. She knows all of that. And then she sees the color red. So if she knows every physical fact about color perception before seeing the color red, and if seeing the color red represents a new fact, then it's not a physical fact, at least not in the way we're talking about it, as physical facts being objective, publicly shareable, third-person things that can be tested and expressed in quantitative language. It can't be a physical fact about the world. The redness of the rose its subjective qualitative character, its qualia, must represent a non-physical fact about the world. Therefore, the conclusion, the world must consist of more than just physical facts. So this is a disproof of physicalism, the notion that all that exists are the entities of physics and facts about them, that you've exhausted a description of the world when you've described it in terms of physical science. So this is a different claim from what Nagel's making. They're related, they're close. But Nagel's asking an epistemological question, so it's a question about knowledge, about whether we can learn or communicate subjective facts through objective methods. He thinks no. Jackson is making a much stronger ontological claim about the existence of non-physical facts. He's saying that it's not just about being able to know them and express them. It's about whether or not they exist. Ontology is the part of philosophy that deals with what exists, with things that exist. So Jackson is saying that there are non-physical entities in the world, and that mental facts represent something non-physical that is a true, objectively real thing that exists in the world. Or I guess, would it be an objectively real, a subjectively real thing? Yeah, I guess it would be the subjective represents, yeah. Anyway. One influential counter-argument to Mary's Room comes from the philosopher David Lewis, who is a huge guy in the field and has done like way more stuff than this, but this is all we are going to get into here. And he borrows a distinction from Gilbert Ryle, remember him from last video. Lewis distinguishes between gaining new information about something and gaining a new ability. And this is how he's going to attack the Mary's Room example. This is how he's going to come after Jackson's thought experiment. And it's a distinction between knowing that something is the case and knowing how to do something. Between knowing that and knowing how. So Mary's knowledge of physics is what's called propositional knowledge, right? It's knowledge of information that is about something. It's knowledge that could be put into a propositional statement. It's knowledge that is specifically about a thing. When Mary leaves the room, she doesn't gain new information. She doesn't gain new knowledge about something, about the world. What she gains is a new ability to structure and apply the information that she already possessed within a new context. So she already, from the books, from her knowledge of color science, she already had all of the facts. What she lacked was a particular way of applying them, what Lewis calls a template. She had all the information, but she didn't have the experience of the case study in which that information could be applied practically as an ability. So when Mary leaves the room, she doesn't learn new information about the world. She doesn't learn any new non-physical facts about the world. She learns how to do something that she couldn't do before with the information that she already had. Is that distinction clear? So, according to the survey that's linked, it's going to be linked when I send out the announcement for this module. And it's the same survey that I've been citing. It's usually been on the Course Cafe. I'm moving it to the announcements to hopefully make it more visible. Let me know if you liked it better in the Course Cafe. I can move it back there. A strong majority of contemporary philosophers and neuroscientists agree that Mary learns something new when she leaves the black and white room. I think most people, I won't say that most people, a lot of people are convinced by the argument that, you know, she learns a new fact. A similar majority of researchers also agree that physicalism is true, that physical facts exhaust what there is to know about the world, that the world is physical all the way down. Question then becomes, is it possible to accept both of these claims at the same time? Is it possible to accept that we live in a completely physical universe while also agreeing that when Mary leaves the Red Room, she learns a new fact despite already knowing every physical fact? Jackson, at the time of the Mary's Room papers, endorsed a form of property dualism, which we discussed that in the previous videos. Since then, he has recanted this position. He no longer accepts property dualism. he now embraces a form of reductive physicalism, a form of reductionism that says that everything is physical. And it seems like he accepts it upon grounds similar to what Lewis is saying here about. And this is my son making a cameo appearance here at the end of the video. Hey, Rowan, do you want to say hi to the philosophy class? No? Okay. We'll wrap it up here. I've linked to an article where Jackson talks about his reasons why. And we will pick this up again with artificial intelligence. And I will see you then.